I think we'll recognize the senator from New Jersey. If he just yield a minute or two just to respond, I intend, we wanted to permit others to speak, and I'll speak in just a short time in response to my friend and colleague from Wyoming. If this legislation did what he suggested it did, I wouldn't be a sponsor or support the legislation either. I'll go into some detail in explaining what the legislation does do and what it doesn't do. And I just to reaffirm with regard to the senator from Utah, this issue about having a secret ballot or a non-secret ballot, we leave up to the states. And that, I think, is rather than trying to mandate that to the states, a lot has been talked about here about giving the states the options about how to proceed. We say on both of the items that the senator addressed that the states are the ones that should make those judgments and the determination. We'll have a longer time to debate that. I thank the senator from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me first say that I appreciate the senator from Massachusetts and his leadership in this regard, and I have come to the floor not only to acknowledge his leadership on this critical piece of legislation, but to speak strongly in support of the Public Safety Employer-Employee Cooperation Act. For me, Mr. President, this bill is about protecting some of the most basic, fundamental rights of America's bravest and finest public servants. Our nation's first responders put their lives on the line every day. Now, that sometimes only comes vividly to us when we lose one of those brave men and women and their lives are lost in the line of duty, but the reality is they are at risk every day, risking everything they have to protect us, to protect complete strangers, to protect their communities. At a moment's notice, they're on call to respond to natural and man-made disasters of every size, scope, and severity. These men and women are firefighters, emergency management technicians, police officers, first responders are prepared day in and day out to go to any length to save the life of a complete stranger. They have one goal: to keep others safe. In those moments, they don't think about anything else. As they rush to respond to a fire, they're not thinking about their job security. As they risk their life in a collapsing building, they are not doing it in return for a higher wage. As they put themselves into harm's way, they are not thinking about the benefits their family might receive if the worst should happen. Mr. President, in 2006, more than 75,000 police officers were injured in the line of duty. And last year, 140 police officers paid the ultimate price and lost their lives in the line of duty. In 2006, more than 83,000 firefighters were injured in the line of duty. And 115 firefighters paid the ultimate price. This year alone, another 45 have lost their lives. Mr. President, today we have an opportunity to thank these selfless heroes, not just with our words, but with our actions. We have an opportunity to guarantee the rights of those who work to protect our lives and safety every day. In short, we have an opportunity to fix what is wrong and do what is right. This legislation simply gives first responders the same right that virtually all Americans enjoy: the right to collectively bargain and have a voice about their working conditions, to come together in common cause to achieve a better standard. Now, a majority of the states already confer this right to collective bargaining, including my home state of New Jersey. This bill would give public safety officers across the country that right. It would ensure that if they choose to, they can join a union and bargain over wages, hours, and working conditions. Now, I was a former mayor. I did not have the challenges of having a unionized police force and firefighting force that ultimately worked in contradiction to the interests of my municipality. I did not. And certainly in the urbanized context in which I was, that was a bigger challenge than others. So the reality is I do not believe that the right to collectively organize automatically means the dire consequences that some have portrayed as it relates to this legislation. In New Jersey, we recognize how important it is for first responders to have a strong working relationship with the municipalities they serve. We recognize these public safety officers deserve the dignity and respect to have a say in their wages, hours, and working conditions. And we recognize that when public safety employers and employees work together, the results serve us extremely well. Now, some of my colleagues will try to argue this legislation will hurt volunteer firefighters by limiting the amount of time professionals can volunteer while off duty. We have volunteer firefighters in New Jersey alongside those who are organized at the same time, and that has not simply been the case. This is simply incorrect, as the legislation specifically forbids any state from putting limits on professional firefighters who volunteer during their off-duty hours. Others are saying this legislation could effectively repeal states' right-to-work laws. Again, this legislation specifically allows states to enforce right-to-work laws. The bill makes no change in states that have right-to-work laws and would not prevent any other states from adopting new right-to-work laws. So let's be honest about what the bill actually does say. It does not dictate how states should approach this issue. The bill only requires local governments to engage in negotiations if workers choose to join a union. It respects the authority of local legislative bodies to approve or disapprove funding for any negotiated agreement. The bill only affects states that don't already provide their public safety officers with the right to bargain collectively. States that do not have these protections can choose to establish their own collective bargaining systems. Now, Mr. President, I hope we realize what is at stake here. Beyond fairness, which is something that is fundamentally important, particularly for those who risk their lives every day, we're talking about safety. In states where there are not collective bargaining protections for workers, fatalities are 39% higher. That's a fact. In states where there is not collective bargaining opportunities, fatalities are 39% higher. The fact is, greater protections for workers lead to better safety conditions. Now, we've seen this time and time again, in which the negotiation, some people think it's only about money. And it's not just about money. When I was a mayor, some of the most significant negotiations were about the standard under which you operated, which was not only important as it related to the firefighter or the police officer, but was important as it related to the response time and the ability to perform the services that ultimately save property and save lives. So some people think this is all about simply money and making more and having better benefits. A lot of it was about working conditions and the nature of how one, in fact, applies their profession in a way that not only save lives, but also of those who serve, firefighters and police officers, but also save the lives of those they were sworn to protect because they had a better system. Breathing apparatus, having the ability to have the technology to enter into a fire and be able to detect someone who had been immobilized. Often that negotiation was not about money, but about, can we have this equipment that is essential for us to perform our duty in behalf of those we are sworn to serve. So it seems